Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to Energy Speaks Back, powered by B2B Energy. My name is Paul Webb, and I'm the founder of B2B Energy, and I'm your host. And weekly, I present to you energy experts from around the world. Welcome to episode 121. Our purpose, as always, is to provide a good understanding of energy management knowledge from around the world, which is available today for us to deliver savings that impact on our planet. We would like to thank utility people who are creating a better career and future for people within our industry, and also Esther Energy, who are our certificate partners. My guest today is the Group Chief Financial Officer for Valor Hospitality, and he's going to be sharing with us his insights into managing his organisation's third largest expense. So without any further ado, I give you Paul Nisbett. Good morning, Paul. How are you today?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well. And it's my second face-to-face. And I'm really excited about interviewing. And I was going to say this is my first customer interview, but you've been on my episodes before, on episode 50, wasn't it?
Yeah, we did. And then we did also, we did a session, didn't we, in COVID?
That's right.
So we had a session when we did that where we had a number of industry people together.
That's right.
And yeah, that was very interesting, getting different people looking at it, because obviously I look through the lens of hospitality and service, 24-hour service. So energy for us is a constant challenge and a material cost in our business. So
yeah,
we're always looking at that kind of thing. So it was interesting to listen to other people and how people deal with their challenges.
I always say it's the third largest expense. Is that about right, would you say?
Third or fourth. I mean, it can depend on, again, looking at where we are with government taxes and stuff like that come into the business.
And you have food and beverage as well, don't you?
Food and beverage can be very high. It's about 30% of the cost of the actual selling price, so it's quite a material number. But it is in our top 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And one that is harder to control than maybe some of the others because of so many external factors. Yeah,
and balancing the customer experience, which is sometimes more important, isn't it?
Yeah, it's classic when people come and do audits and things like that, and then come around, well, you can turn this or you turn that off, and it's like, well, hold it, we are a service industry, we are hospitality.
Yeah.
People actually pay for lights to be on in the bedroom, they pay to actually be able to see the corridor, down the corridor to their bedroom. So there is times where there is, probably say there's initiatives, there's software and there's systems out there, but you've also got to remember that you're actually providing a service.
Exactly. Home from home, isn't it?
Yeah, and the classic of having these lovely sensors so that you're in the bathroom in a hotel and then you're having to wait for the lights to turn off when you're sitting in the toilet isn't really a service offering. No. So there is that kind of thing where you think, actually, do you go too far? The other ones, when you look at some of the showers, and they've got so much air coming out of the shower hose that all your body's getting is hit with air. It's not actually getting water. It can't wash, and that's where you sometimes can go too far in what you're trying to offer. So it's the fine line being how to you manage and deliver great service and an offering for the customer, but also limit the consumption of what is a scarce resource. Yeah.
So we've known each other for many years. Yeah. I know a lot about yourself, personal and business. And so for the benefit of our audience today, can you give us your background and maybe touch on your origin story of where you've come from?
Yeah, so I studied hotel management a lot of years ago and qualified as with a degree in hotel management, and then I joined Forte when they existed as a graduate. But I went in the accounting side of it. I preferred the numbers side of it, so I actually joined them as a graduate and then qualified as an accountant with Forte in the hotel industry, and I pretty much run most of the major hotels that you know in the UK. If you go down Park Lane, I think I've run under my time. I probably had 5 of the hotels down Park Lane that I've run at different times: Grosvenor House, Hilton Park Lane, the Marriott at Park Lane, And then you go around, so you look around the UK, and I've pretty much had hotels in every city over the last 30-something years. I look after the Middle East, Europe and Africa for Valor. So I'm pretty much travelling all the time, and interestingly seeing how all of those areas are dealing with energy, and it's really interesting to see how far we are, or how far different countries are adapting to it. So pretty much, say, seasoned hotelier and a qualified accountant. So I very much focus on the kind of the back of house side of hospitality. Very obviously, you know, the teams look at the day-to-day guest experience, running of the hotels day-to-day. I'm more looking from the behind the scenes, the admin, the procurement, the IT, the finance, the structure of the company, etc. So that's really where I get involved. So kind of complement the managing director. So we kind of work hand in hand on that side of business. And that's what I've been doing. First time I was an FD, I was 28 years old.
Wow.
So, you know, I've been doing this kind of gig for nearly 25 plus years. So I've kind of seen the industry through many different phases, foot and mouth, Gulf War, all the way through to now last COVID. So yeah, I've kind of got the scars on my back in different ways, and know how to deal with it. And that's where we've been together probably now 12, 13 years.
Yeah, I was doing the sums last night. Yeah,
about 12, 13 years. Yeah, I've won more major European UK things at Arsenal than you're one.
You've even won one of our players, haven't you?
I've won one of your players, yeah. Rice Baby is coming. Should be announced by the time this podcast comes out. But yeah, we've known each other for a lot of years. And we've been on this journey in different phases for a lot of years, because we started very much at the time of actually what is it we need to do, and it's kind of a new thought process about how do you look after energy and what do you do about it. And our industry tends to, when everything's good, it's never been the big thing to focus on. There's always another challenge. But as you start seeing prices rise, and we go through these phases around the global financial crisis, now the Ukraine, suddenly everyone wakes up to this cost, and suddenly becomes over 10% of your revenue is going into utilities, and it's what you're going to do about it, which is reactive rather than what we've been doing for the last 12 years, which is actually managing the process, constantly trying to drive down consumption, and to look at actually how to better manage this cost, and how to move to be a more carbon neutral style business, which is challenging when you've got hotels that are 100, 200 years old, as we've had in previous businesses, to then when you're building new, it's much easier to plan and build in the right technologies, the right flow of how a hotel works to be efficient. But as I say, if you think back to some of the old hotels, the Palace in Manchester, for example, and then you look at some of these properties, the Fitzroy now, which is the old Hotel Russell. These were big old hotels that's been standing for hundreds of years.
I used to, the Russell, for instance, I've still got pictures of the switch gear in there.
Yeah.
Never seen anything like it. It should have been a museum, basically.
Yeah, and that's what you think about, but you can't, by nature, you can't sit there and go, well, it's such an old building, we can't do anything.
Exactly.
And that was the most interesting when we started this journey, was actually some of the managers of some of the old historic buildings were far more engaged in what they could do than potentially some of the general managers with the newer hotels where a lot had been done for them. So there's no excuse for anybody when they say, oh, well, my building's really old, I can't do anything about it. Yes, you can. And that's where we really started a lot of our journey. This 12 years, we've gone through numerous stages of this journey, and how does it all come together? And we've achieved a huge amount. But we sit here today looking forward and going, actually, we've still got so much to do. Yeah. And that's the most frightening thing, is you move from one phase to the next phase, and you're still looking there and going, okay, what can we do next? Where can we go next? And, at the end of the day, we're not doing it, yes, we're doing it financially, of course we are. We're also doing it for our children, our children's children, etc., in terms of what actually do we want in the world, what do we actually want to be, and how do we want the world to be. So that's where you look at our younger employee base and you look at their conversations with you are so much more engaged in this than we would have been at their age. So the awareness and the expectation that what are you doing is massively different.
Do you have a well, I know you're focusing on ESG. Is that what you're going to develop? Is an ESG policy across the group?
Yeah, we are, and we basically, rather than it being led by the likes of Brian as the chief exec or myself, it's actually being led by the operations team,
right,
linking across to a number of people within the business. So actually, the biggest challenge we have as Valor, and we've got 90 odd hotels throughout the world. We look, we run multiple different styles of businesses, from game reserves to high-end 5-star hotels. Is dictatorship of we're telling you what to do and this is how we do it. And anytime you do that, it never lives in the business. It doesn't embed itself in the business. So it's far better that the operational teams and the teams buy in and they drive it, and we support them, and keeping it on the agenda at their leadership meetings and flagging it up with the general managers and having that, but actually let the team manage it, because the more they take ownership of it, the more it embeds in the business and it becomes the culture. It becomes
their day-to-day, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It's so easy for us to walk in and put posters on the wall and to say this is what you've got to do, and because it's on our agenda, it then becomes on everyone's agenda. And yes, that is important, but actually, if you can build it from the bottom up rather than the top down, you've got much more of a chance for it to succeed and for your strategy to be live in the business. There's so many examples over years of basically initiatives driven from the top that basically don't last, and they just get, they're just literally papering over cracks.
Yeah. Let's go back to your early days. What's the focus on energy then, in the early days of doing this role?
Well, when we started, we took over the Barcello hotels, became Hotel Collection. We literally just come out from the global financial crisis, and every penny counted. And so the focus was, what can we do to drive down cost? And that's where we first met, and that was the driver, was, well, are we efficient? Are we doing what we can do? What are we looking at? So if you think about our journey, the first thing we engaged with you was to do actually audits of all the properties. So really was give us an assessment of where we are. We'd just taken over these hotels, no real knowledge of the good, the bad, the ugly. And it was just get in there, give us a truthful, honest answer of where we are. Interesting, we had CHPs in, but they weren't working. They've been in place for 15, 20 years. And if they were working, they were noisy, they were cumbersome, they were being turned off. Sorry, bear with me. They were being turned off because they were affecting their guest experience, because the noise was horrendous. Remember Blackpool being a classic example.
Right in the middle of the courtyard, wasn't it?
Right in the middle of the courtyard. Where would you not put a CHP unit? Right in the middle of the bedrooms all around you. So we literally just gave you the keys to the hotels and said, go and tell us what we don't know, and tell us what we could do. And we really took that. You came up with an action plan, and we just worked through the principles of that and what could we do. And the fundamental of any of that starting is awareness and training and engagement of people. Before you spend any money, it's firstly, look, what can you do as working practice? What can you do in terms of awareness that people buy into? And that really was like, right, okay, let's get a team together, let's build a process that people can engage in terms of, actually, are you aware that all the seals around the fridges are broken, and actually it's just basically you might as well leave the door open because the air's coming out.
Or people weren't shutting the fridges.
Or people weren't shutting the fridges, or the seals, the kind of film seals onto the fridges for the freezers, you know, pull them to the side all day because it's a pain. But actually, no, what you've just done is you've let all of that cold air out into the hot kitchen, or vice versa. So that was a kind of a starter for 10. You know, the taps running all day in the kitchen to defrost fish and all those kind of things were all like...
All the obvious.
All the obvious.
That we found,
Big monitoring. We work with you to monitor our half-hourly usage of electricity, and then we targeted the areas where we knew we didn't need the power.
Yeah.
So from midnight to 5 o'clock in the morning, why have we got all this power on?
Yeah.
Because ultimately the hotels are asleep.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, obviously a couple of them are still. We had some very big banquet houses that could be going to 3, 4 in the morning, but you could manage that. You knew what that was. But predominantly the hotels, by 11 o'clock at night, everyone's in bed. Kitchens should be shut down. Everything should be shut down, and you want a minimum power. So we monitored that, and we focused on that to drive that down. That was like an A. And then we looked at the peaks and troughs of that. So again, the monitoring became really useful, and that communication to the hotels and benchmarking against each other drove a work process that went, why do I want to be bottom of the league? Why am I better at worst?
Yeah.
So we focused on that, really. Then we started to look at the capital deployment we could use, and again, the low-hanging fruit. A classic example is people say, all right, put LEDs in every bedroom. But if you actually look at a hotel, the hours of someone in a bedroom is very low when the light will be on. So if you think about it, you'd be lucky 3-4 hours a day where the lights are on in the hotel room.
The payback wasn't quick enough, was it?
Payback was 5-7 years.
Yeah.
But if you look at corridors, toilets, you look at public areas, you look at meeting rooms, you look at kitchens, you're looking at paybacks of 12, 18, 24 months.
Do you know what triggers my mind there is... in the early days of hotels, the focus is always front of our house, not the back office. Yeah. But what we found is by focusing on energy management in the back office with lighting, where it's on all the time, that was the best. You know, we didn't have to put high quality lighting in there. It had to be just LED. But we made some significant savings because they're on 24/7.
Yeah, and it was things like store cupboards. So you think in a hotel, pretty much every floor's got a laundry room. Well, you just change the switch to either be PIR or push pad, which meant it was only on for half an hour. Otherwise, it'd be on for at least 12 hours a day if they turn the lights off at night. So you're thinking, hold it, you're doing that on a 10-storey building. There's 10 rooms like that just for laundry. Yeah. Let alone offices, let alone...
And then start
areas.
Multiplying that out across the group.
Yeah.
It starts becoming significant, doesn't it?
I mean, the big area we spent lots of money on was the really high quality lighting in the kitchen. If you remember, we put like soft lighting in the LEDs in there, because again, that pretty much is on 18, 19 hours a day. And actually, the heat that comes off those lights, if they're wrong, and it's already a very, very hot area that people do not really understand the heat that's in these kitchens. But if you take that cooling down, but also provide really soft lighting, for the high quality soft lighting was obviously better for health and safety for the kitchen team, but also the volume drop in that was huge for us. So that was a big area. And as I said, then it came to the likes of corridors where we could do PIR process, so they're not on 24 hours a day. Toilet, public areas, again, I come back to this, you don't want to be sitting in a toilet and having to wave your arms because the lights all gone out. But there is ways that you can operate and provide a quality offering in there which is energy efficient. So they were the areas. We moved, obviously we touched on CHP. We then looked at replacing the CHPs that were redundant, that were not efficient, with new CHPs, and where else we could install them, which was hugely beneficial. And we've done that again in Valor, in the portfolios, both the portfolios we operate in the UK. We operate 34 hotels in the UK, and I think we've got something like 28 CHPs in those 34 operators. So it's significant where we can get in. We would have the rest if there was ability to get them in. We just can't.
Yeah.
As I say, we touched on LED, and again, LED is a big saving for us, but not the number one. And then we did a lot of work with you on lagging, because again, you've got to get hot water around big buildings. Come back to what we talked about, some of the old buildings. You've got to get hot water to really old big buildings, and if you're losing that heat, then the boiler's having to work 2 to 3 degrees more than it should do to get the heat to the far corners of a building, where if you lagged properly, then that would reduce the boiler.
We found we had radiators where we didn't need them. In the plant room was far too hot, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was that, because you're burning so much more power and gas to get the heat around a building, which doesn't make sense when actually you're just basically leaving the heat just coming out through the building because you haven't lagged properly. So that was a big thing for us. We looked at voltage optimization in a number of places, which was effective. And then now we're spending more time looking at, with our CHPs as well, is where solar can have a real benefit for us, and the mix between the two to find the right balance between solar and obviously CHPs, etc. And even to the point of where we do the canopies over the car parks. Yeah. So again, you can create a better environment, so the guest experience is better. Their cars are, rather than an open car park, they're in under a canopy, which is better for them, but also directly above it you've got solar panels that can drive.
And the long-term strategy with that is going to be EV. If we've got to start introducing more power into the hotels, why not try and utilise the likes of solar to drive that power?
Yeah, no, totally. And we've got EV pretty much in all of our properties, and we're installing more. So we started off with 2 to 3 EV units. We've now, some of the properties have got 7 or 8, and we're still looking to increase those, because just the nature of the customer, what we're seeing coming. Also, people just come and have meetings, and they'll use to charge the car, and then they'll have meetings in the hotel, so you're providing another service, which is great. Personally, it's important for me as I drive a fully electric car, so I'm kind of quite keen on it, but again, it's not being done for my purpose, it's being done for the customer purpose. And that it is going to be more and more and more, and you're looking at it, and nervous nature saying, well, how is the country going to provide enough EV charging, enough EV power as we go forward, when the demand is to get to that level? But as people greater than I am that can work that one out, we just know that it's ultimately, we're seeing more and more of our customers requesting it. We're seeing more as we come in that the bays are full, and so it's a service we offer. It's a bit like Wi-Fi. When you look at it now, years ago, Wi-Fi, you charge for it, but now it's like a utility. I mean, if you haven't got good Wi-Fi, people don't stay with you, and that's where EV will go, in my opinion. Whether it's now or it's 3-5 years down the road, I don't think if you haven't got adequate EV charging, you're just not going to get the business.
I was looking at the cars this morning in the car park over breakfast, and I'm thinking there could be people sitting there waiting to put their car on charge because they've got to go somewhere today. And if they haven't had the opportunity to charge their car, they're not going to be very happy customers, are they?
No, and I think, as I say, being an EV car driver, there's times when you innocently go straight into an empty car EV space, and someone comes up, I've been waiting for ages.
Really?
Okay, yeah, sorry, I didn't know. Or the vice versa. The most frustrating thing now is someone's charged and they've left their car there. Yeah. And you're like, come on, I can't get, it's like, you need to move your car so I can charge mine. So you can have EV rage coming. Where I live, you can see that boiling now.
There's a taxi driver, he sits on the Lidl's charger all day long reading his paper. I think he's got a luxury now. Long term, he won't, but there'll be people banging on that window saying, can I have a go now? Yeah,
and I think, and again, EVs in so different levels, isn't it? I mean, you've got, you go to Tesco's, whatever, and it's 3 kVA that's coming in your car, and it'll take 25 hours to charge your car. Well done. Or you suddenly look at some of these EV charging of, they say 150, probably getting that 80 to 90, and you can be charged in 40 minutes.
Yeah.
It's very different in terms of what it is. But yeah, you probably find that little charger is probably 3, 5 or 7 kVA, and he needs to be 12 hours. Well, that's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for him as an income to be sitting there not earning. So it's going to get better. But it's a bit like when we first looked at solar and CHP. If you remember CHP, our first conversations where we could overproduce, but we couldn't sell back to the grid.
Because, that was the plan originally, wasn't it?
Yeah, because the grid couldn't cope with taking power back in.
Yeah.
Now, their infrastructure wasn't good enough, which is
and in some cases we had to downsize, didn't we?
Yeah, and that's crazy that actually you could produce more power and you could feed into the demand periods of the grid, but the grid couldn't cope. Now, solar, we're getting to that point now where actually the grid can cope, and I'm not an expert of why, but I think it's, people got to realise that that's what's going to happen. You're putting it on your house, you're putting it on your business, and you want to feed that into the grid, get paid for it, so it becomes an income stream for you, or it offsets your costs, whichever. But you've got to look at it and think, well, actually, it is the responsibility of the grid to sort itself out, and then, if we want to get to this neutral situation, then people can deliver more into the grid and come off from using, using the kind of gas and these fossil fuels, because actually there's a huge opportunity to feed back in the grid if they sorted their infrastructure out.
We're going to touch on the net zero pathway, but let's go just back. So we focus on the consumption. What about the procurement of energy? How have you addressed that?
We've always had a long-term strategy for procurement, and we look at it in terms of when we put in the CHPs in Valor. We looked at a 5-year gas deal. So we looked at de-risking the CHP in terms of having a long-term pricing for gas. Listen, I'd love to pat myself on the back and say that we knew what was coming down the road, but we didn't, did we? We didn't. It saved us millions from the deal we did. But we're already 2 years to go, and we're looking at where we go with the next pricing, and we'll lock that in very early. So our strategy has always been to look at pricing, hedge as much as we think's right, and have the pricing to a sensible level. I think the thing about procurement is you've got to understand the bill, and that's the fundamental. Is if you go back 5 years ago, probably the electricity cost was somewhere close to 60% of the bill, and 40% was the government tariffs, taxes, VAT.
Yeah.
That's literally switched on its head now.
Yeah, totally.
So if you don't understand the billing and you don't understand the charges, then you can't really procure properly. And then what you do, we're very fortunate. We work with a great broker who works with us and helps, and we look at strategies and we come up with numerous strategies. I know I drive him mad when I keep challenging and looking at this and looking at that, but what I try and do is lock in the strategy so we know what the price is, and where we can is de-risk the pricing. So even if we ultimately pay a little bit more for the price going out more, what we've got is a fixed price that says that's really where we are.
So you have budget certainty, really.
Yeah, we have budget price certainty.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the key thing, is we know what our unit price is and we know where our tariffs are going. And if tariffs are increasing, we look at what we can do to mitigate those. So we look at it in that way. So that's why I say you've got to know your billing. You can't just look at a price and go, well, that's what it is. You've got to understand how do things get made up. Things like red zones, day and night, all these things that come in, different tariffs that come in, what can you do? Then it focuses on consumption. And this is what the hotels and the teams can focus on. They can't focus on price. Price is not in their control. So you take away the element that's not in their control, and then you focus on the element that's in their control. And then what's in their control is how much consumption they are using, what they should be using, monitoring of it, reporting of it. So that's where we focus on. So if you actually chat to any of our general managers, any of our finance guys, our engineers, they don't talk about price, they talk about consumption.
Yeah.
Because it's the only thing they can control. So they get benchmarked. We have daily reports, we have weekly reports that go out and they compare against their other hotels. They also look at, say it's based on half-hour meter readings for electricity, gas, for water. So they get a full view of what's happening. And they're quite often the GMs are the ones phoning up and going, why is this spiking? What's happened? Yeah. And that's been hugely valuable for us because, again, the CHPs don't always work 100%. There's always going to be some downtowns, moving parts, and also the heat we just experienced in June has meant some of them at times have switched down, and then you've got to reset them. But if people are looking all the time, the window of that is getting less and less because they're aware of it. Yeah. So we're not sitting there saying the general manager suddenly has to walk around with his phone in front of him looking at what's being used every half hour. No. But if every morning he comes in and he's got his daily trading and he's got his energy consumption, it's a 2-minute look. Okay, that looks about right. Oh, that's gone up a bit. Okay, chat to the maintenance. How can I be better? Yeah, how can I be better? Chat to the maintenance guy. What happened yesterday? Why did we spike? Oh, well, it's actually this event and they needed this and this. Okay, that makes sense. So it's just one of the routines that comes into running a business on a daily basis.
Interestingly, we have a weekly meeting with the group. So originally that was with all the maintenance managers. We then started to release the data, and guess what? We have the general managers on that meeting now. They're all very interested. And I get general managers contacting me now to say my CHP's down, not the maintenance guys. Yeah. So it's amazing how it's switched their focus, and they've got a better understanding of it now.
Yeah, and it's, as we said, it's one of the material costs. If you look at payroll, timesheets, rotas, signing that off every week, they're looking at that all the time. You know, they're looking at what's happening with their revenues constantly, and then how do we get the right people in the right place at the right time to serve the customer. So they see it. It's their P&L. It's their cost. So all you're trying to do is give them the information to let them manage. And it's no different to payroll. It's no different to the cost of sales of food or beverage, that they're looking at their daily shopping basket to say, okay, what's my food cost looking like? It's going to be, what's my energy cost looking like? Yeah. It's just, where before it was just not on the radar. Now it's one of the 3 or 4 daily routines they look at and they're interested in. And because the cost fluctuated so much over a period of time, you know, it's raised this, and so that's why there's an energy to it, and there's a, you know, as I say, it's not we're asking them to take an hour a day looking at energy. It's probably a 3-5 minute conversation as part of what happened yesterday, what's happening today, as their morning meeting. So it's just on the agenda. It's there. Energy walks happen and walk round, and they're looking at, and they're challenging, why are these lights on? Why is this not happening? You know, all of this happens, and they're walking there now. They're walking with their eyes open to energy rather than purely the guest experience. They're also thinking, okay, why is that? Why are we leaving those lights on? Why are we doing whatever? So it's just, if you arm people with the tools, they can do something about it.
Yeah. What do you think your challenges are?
Challenges, I mean, the challenges we have is, again, it's our industry has a challenge about how do we get to net zero. When you think about procurement, you know, we've got spirits, wines, whatever, that have got to come throughout the world. As much as you want local provenance of food, people still want items that the UK doesn't produce, so we're still having to ship that in.
Say strawberries all year round.
But you know, you look at various different, you know, just go for a menu, and as much as you want to have local, you've got a price point to local, so you're managing an element of between what you can afford and what you want to give, and how do you want to do that. So that's always going to be a challenge for us. Again, you've got the balance of what is the guest experience, and to the point of, you need to light a hotel, you need to make sure it's warm, you need to make sure, you know, the shower works properly, that there is enough water coming out the shower head that you actually can have a shower. So you've got that element of what needs to happen, but you're on that journey to get as close as you can. And buying carbon credits, at the end of the day, what is it?
It's wooden dollars, isn't it?
It's kind of, yes, it's a good thing, but ultimately, is it really where we should be going? It's the practices of what we can do and how we can do it. We partake in building a forest in Scotland, and we do a lot of work that way. And if you come and have a conference with us, you can obviously offset your travel, and we can bill you for that, and we give that over for planting trees, etc. We also, silly things like, we'll have a bet on the revenue in a month, and then the loser has to put money in. Like last month, it cost me 5 trees. So it's kind of like, rather than it just being swapping money with each other as a pure fun bet, it was actually, okay, it's going to cost you, if you lose, and I'm right in terms of what the total revenue of the group is. If you lose, well, by the way, it's going to cost you 5 trees. So then you donate the money. Yeah. So it's little things where you make a difference. But the biggest challenge is genuinely, how can we deliver what the guest wants? How can we provide the service people want? How can we have the goods, as I say, the menu, the food and beverage that people want in a kind of near as net zero environment. And it is getting better, and the supply chain is getting better, and the packaging that's coming is getting better. And you're trying to avoid having 10 trucks arrive, and if we can get one delivery that can have multiple items on it and make that better, etc. So,
do you think net zero is achievable?
I'd like to think it is, and I think the way the pace the world is moving, that yes, things will get there. I think that it's like anything. You look at something and you think, right, this is new, and then in 12 months' time, it's been superseded by something.
Yeah.
So
it becomes the normal, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I think the pace of what's coming and where we see challenges, people will attack those challenges and people will resolve those. Timelines, I don't know, but I think there is an energy to really get to that, and I think there's routes to get to that. But I do think it's fine having a government that makes these big statements, but what's behind it, and how do you help it happen? And quite often it's grandstanding, and actually when you sit behind it and you go, well, actually, okay, how are you going to help this? There's no substance. So I think that's where it has to come, is that actually real effort has to be put behind what are we trying to do, rather than just throwing out statements. And I think that's where it's going to, over time, you're going to see a lot of it come. And I think the problem is, it's one of those things, what we can't even think of today, what tomorrow's technology will be like. Because you just think over what's happened in the last 10, 20 years, and where is technology now? So where can it be next level? It's very difficult, because it's like, even if I've got children in their early 20s, and potentially the jobs they will do in the next 10 years haven't even been created yet. And that's quite frightening when you generally think, actually, we don't even know what those jobs will be.
No.
So that's where you've got to sit there and think, we'll get there, because there is a will to get there. How we get there, we're probably going to be on many different roads. Some will work, some won't work, some will be better than we think about. And I think that's really, we just got to be open to all opportunities, look at everything and say, is this actually the right one to back?
Yeah. Paul, it's come to this time of the interview where I'd like to ask you, you've given lots of information back today, but is there anything specific you can give back to our industry today?
I think the things that the things I focus on is, and I touched on it earlier, you can't challenge, you can't impact something you don't know about. So you've got to get into the weeds. And I think that's the thing, like when I say about billing, you've got to get into the bills, you've got to get underneath them to know how to impact something and to change a way of working. Red zone being an example. So in the UK, between roughly 4 and 7 o'clock at night, there's a premium charge on your bill. And that's really because the grid can't cope with the demand of kids coming out from school and homework and dinners and everything.
Yeah.
For us, it's like having one rational oven suddenly goes to 10 at that period of time. Now, we can't stop serving food, but what we can do is basically say, when do you need that oven on? How do you need that oven on?
Yeah.
Meeting rooms, if guests are leaving at 5 o'clock at night, turn all lights off until 7 o'clock at night until you need to clean them.
And managing that profile.
So you manage the profile of what it is. We changed our on-premise laundry to finish at 3:30 in the afternoon. Paid a premium for the staff to come in slightly earlier, but we didn't want the on-premise laundry working for 4 o'clock because the premium cost was 10 times it was the hour before. So to me, if you don't understand your cost and you don't analyse it, and you can't influence it. So I think fundamentally that would be my biggest thing is actually don't listen to what people tell you to do. Get in the weeds, understand what's impacting your business, and then the more you understand it, you open it out to the team, they'll come with the ideas, they'll tell you what they can do to save it if they understand it.
And they're going to be the ideas that get delivered, aren't they?
Yeah, because as I say, anything we try and deliver from the top is ultimately, is that really impacting the business? Some of it will, some of it won't. Some of the stuff that really makes the impact is actually when you talk to the guys on the shop floor, and they know where their challenges are, and then they start coming up with ideas, and people go, oh my God, that's so obvious, but we'd have missed it because we're not doing that job every day, so we don't see it every day.
And that was the benefit about doing all those assessments before, because we found so many different best practices that one hotel was doing and another wasn't, and we just brought those back to the head office as such and then put them back in. Yeah.
And then when you encourage people to say, well, this is why they're producing, this is why their cost is lower than yours, this is why their consumption is lower than yours, then they go, okay,
what can we do?
What can we do?
Yeah.
And I think that's partly why we put an energy engineer into Valor, was begin, how do you get that best practice moving? How do you monitor what you're doing? And how do you then ensure that best practice is consistent across the portfolio?
Yeah.
And it's not something we're going to wake up every day think about, and the GMs won't wake up and be their number one. But if you've got someone who's dedicated to that, then actually they wake up and think about that.
Yeah. We had one yesterday where the GM from another hotel said, we're the same hotel as that other hotel, and they're better than us. I said, oh, I'm just looking at their scoring, and we've got them scored as excellent. She goes, well, I want to be excellent. And straight away, that was driving her energy, because she wanted to be excellent. They all want to be excellent, these GMs. They want to drive their business down. But at the end of the day, the P&L will improve. Yeah. And obviously the environment will improve because of reduced consumption.
And the owners return. And ultimately, we manage hotels for owners. And
exactly.
And ultimately, the more, the more profitable they are for an owner, more likely are to have more. Yeah. And we can grow our business. So it's all a circle.
I like the getting amongst the weeds. I may have to use that one day.
All right. Okay. It is true, though. It's the same as anything. You
mentioned that last night over dinner.
Simple to me, it's like an iceberg.
Yeah.
Okay. 90% of what I do is underwater. You don't see it because it's all the stuff that has to happen. The 10% is the nice stuff that comes out the front that people see. And that's exactly the same here. A lot of the stuff that to get it right, you've got to, it is that in the weeds, it's the things that happen that people don't see. Yeah. But if they don't work.
And with Lee, he's going to have to roll his sleeves up and get stuck in and fight through those weeds, isn't he?
Yeah, and he does. Yeah. And actually, but the reward of seeing the changes, the reward is great because you actually truly can influence something, where sometimes you're in the middle of a job where can you really see the influence you're having on something?
That was a question I was going to ask earlier. Where do you see the impact of all of this?
I mean, fundamentally, the first thing you see is the P&L.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, the numbers don't hide.
No.
So if you in your P&L look at the consumption, and you look at the consumption rather than just the cost. You say, right, show us how much consumption we have. And we forecast on the basis of what's our forward consumption. So they're forecasting what they think they're going to consume for gas, water, electricity. And then we monitor to that. So that's an immediate, do you see it? So that's obviously from there. Then you start looking at, when you're looking at monitoring, you're looking at the reporting and government reporting, etc. And you can see year on year, where does your impact? We're in the ESOS period at the moment, aren't we? So of course we're looking at what's our commitment for the next few years. So again, we got to be keen that what we're going to commit to, we can deliver. So then that comes again to an action plan, right? Okay, if these are the 5 things we're going to do over these next period of years, how do we do them? Break them down, follow them up, and bite-sized chunks of what can you do.
Yeah.
So that generally is what you're constantly looking at, but the numbers don't lie. And that's as simple. Wherever you look at it, you can fluff it up any which way you want, but ultimately, at the end of the day, the numbers don't lie. You're either achieving, reducing. For us, we would like to. And
I've been on the end of those numbers many a time with you, where we've been questioning numbers.
Question your spreadsheets to make sure they add up. But I mean, that's a different thing. But yeah, the thing is, if ultimately you're going to be judged on something, the numbers come in. As I say, graphically, we look at a lot of the stuff graphically, and we can see the peaks and troughs, and we can see the trends. And again, if you're looking at MATs, the moving average trend, and you can see consumption's dropping down, then you know the impact's coming through. So you can see it in there. But it's ultimately a numbers game.
Brilliant. Well, Paul, I'd like to say thank you very much for this opportunity. And also thank you very much for, the last 12 or 13 years of working with you. It's been an amazing journey. And I think you've really led the industry. I'm not just saying that because, getting amongst them weeds has been something you've been following for many years. And I think organisations now need to take a look at that and follow that focus.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think it's one of those things that once you get into it, you kind of want to know what's next, and you're constantly looking at it thinking, actually, where does it go? And it has been an interesting journey. We've had a number of ups and downs. We've had, we've been through a number of challenges in supply and what's happening and everything. But I think we're in a better place than we were. And I think that's the most important thing of anything, isn't it? Is you sit there and go, actually, are we in a better place than when we started? 100%. Are we in a better place than we were last year? As long as those are yes, you're making the right roads and you're making the right decisions, and that's the key thing.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. And please, you and your family, stay safe in these times.
Thank you very much, and you too.